Hello and welcome. My name is Elizabeth Hengel, and I am the Donor Relations Manager for the Nature Conservancy here in Wisconsin. I, along with some of my colleagues and the Nature Conservancy supporters, are excited to share inspiring stories of conservation successes made possible by planned giving. We are thankful for having so many people join us today virtually and hope you all enjoy this event. First, we would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. Our main office is in Madison, and the Nature Conservancy respectfully acknowledges the earlier inhabitants of Door County as previous custodians of these lands and waters. And we pay our respects to the elders of these peoples past, present, and future. We acknowledge the continued cultural, social, and spiritual connections of the Indigenous peoples who have lived here. The peoples known as the Potawatomi, the Ho-Chunk, the Sauk, and Fox, Peoria, and Kickapoo. We recognize and value the essential and continuing contribution of Indigenous peoples to the region. And we do apologize if anyone has been excluded from this land acknowledgement. And so before we start, a few items to help you participate in today's event. During the webinar, you will not have camera or audio privileges. If you have any comments or technical questions, please direct them to the chat box in the bottom corner of your screen. Our moderators working behind the scenes are ready to help answer any of those questions that you have. Next to the chat icon is a question bubble. During the Q&A session or during our speakers' remarks, please type any questions you have for our speakers in the Q&A box. We'll also get every question, so please don't hold back if you're curious. For this event, we are also offering closed captioning for those who would find subtitles helpful. You can click the CC button to turn closed captioning on and off at the bottom. And just so you know, we are recording this event and we will share the recording in our follow-up email. All right, so let's get started with today's event. And just so you know where we're going today, here's our presentation at a glance. I'm going to give you a little introduction to the importance of planned giving, and then we will have two dedicated supporters share their inspiring stories, followed by a deep dive into the largest gift ever to come to Wisconsin. And we'll have our regional planned giving specialist touch on ways that you can create your own conservation legacy. So please stay and join us for the interactive Q&A session. We look forward to talking with you then. All right, so our virtual event today is a special thank you to some of our most dedicated supporters. So thank you to the members of our Legacy Club and Warren Knowles Society who have joined us today. These special groups of members are critical supporters of our work, and we wouldn't be able to do great conservation in Wisconsin without them. Our Legacy Club consists of people who have already chosen to support our work through planned estate giving, and our Warren Knowles Society recognizes members who give $1,000 or more annually. These gifts support every project the Wisconsin chapter undertakes. Both groups receive special invitations, updates, our beautiful calendar, recognition in our publications, and a lead role in ensuring that our most valued inheritance becomes our most important legacy. And over the last 60 years, we've protected more than 200,000 acres of Wisconsin's lands and waters. These special places here are all for us to enjoy because people who cared about them took action to protect them. And today we get to highlight some of those people and share how planned giving helps protect nature for years to come. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker. We have TNC supporter Karen Oberhauser. Karen is the director of the UW-Madison Arboretum and a professor in their entomology department. Karen is passionate about conservation of the world's biodiversity and founded the nationwide citizen science project called the Monarch Larva Monitoring Program in 1996. Karen received the White House Champion of Change Award for her work with this citizen science in 2013. Karen, thanks for being here today, and we are so excited to hear your story. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It's really great to be here today. And I'd like to thank Elizabeth and all of the other Nature Conservancy staff who are here today for organizing this event, and to everyone who's attending it. The commitment to conservation that's demonstrated by your presence here today is important. And I'm happy to share my own personal story with you. It's a little hard to talk about myself, but here goes. In 2016, I had a decision to make. The reasons that I faced this decision were both happy and sad, but the end result is a good one. my husband and I had purchased 40 acres of land that was under conservation easement in Door County, Wisconsin, with a wonderful home that contained all sorts of innovations that led to an extremely low energy and water use footprint. I love the land, and my husband Don was excited about the engineering innovations. We looked forward to spending increasing amounts of time in Door County over the years. So that's the happy beginning of my story. Unfortunately, Don died of lymphoma just as we finished purchasing this land. And I was left with the decision of what to do with this shared dream. It took me a few years, but it soon became clear that the property really was a shared dream that was for the two of us, and that my pathway was now leading in other directions. And also that I could afford to donate the land and the building, providing funding to an organization that shared my values and Don's values as well, and hopefully helping to fulfill someone else's dream when they purchase the land. There were two main reasons that donating the property to the Nature Conservancy made a lot of sense for me. First of all, my family has long and strong connections to the Nature Conservancy, especially with the Wisconsin chapter. My mom and dad, Sandy and Pete Oberhauser, were longtime supporters, still are longtime supporters, I should say. Sorry, Mom. And my dad was on the Wisconsin board for about 9 years in the 1990s. My three sisters and I have many memories of stories of Nature Conservancy meetings, trips, and people. And our family has maintained many of the connections that were built during those years. I've heard from a few Nature Conservancy folks, actually more than just a handful, about a trip to Nicaragua that my dad took that involved river trips and dugout canoes and riding donkeys up a mountain, and my very tall father's feet dragging on the ground during that ride up the mountain. My daughter Amy had a volunteer internship with the Nature Conservancy as she was making decisions about her own future in conservation. And she too has kept these connections as she's built her career. For her, this connection came at the beginning of her career, as opposed to how my parents made the connections in their retirement. The second reason that donating to the Nature Conservancy made a lot of sense for me is because of my own career in conservation that began with monarch butterflies. I've tracked firsthand the decline of a well-loved species, starting with my PhD dissertation in the 1980s, when monarchs were plentiful throughout their summer breeding season in the upper Midwest and covered huge swaths of forests and their wintering grounds in the mountains of central Mexico, which I've had the pleasure and honor to visit many times during my career. Monarchs, while still relatively common, have undergone a severe and ongoing decline. I know firsthand the importance of preserving and restoring habitat for this species and for the myriad other species that monarchs share their habitat with. And I also know the importance of engaging as many people as possible in conservation. Of course, this is what the Nature Conservancy is all about. So now I'm the director of the UW-Madison Arboretum. The Arboretum, for those of you who haven't been here, is comprised of 1,200 acres within the city of Madison and 513 acres of land in 11 different outlying properties throughout the state. And 4 of these 11 properties were donated to the University of Wisconsin by the Nature Conservancy and then fell under Arboretum management. These properties are Abraham's Woods and Oliver Prairie, 2 scientific and natural areas in Greene County, Hub City Bog Scientific Natural Area in Richland County, and Lodi's Mill Bluff Scientific and Natural Area in Sauk County. These are amazing remnant sites that represent a diversity of ecosystems and are important parts of our research and management work. This is just one example of a long history of collaborative work by the Nature Conservancy, in this case, finding the best partners to carry on land management and protection. The Arboretum's threefold mission of caring for Arboretum land, furthering the science that we and others need to make the best possible land management decisions, and strengthening connections between people in the natural world, all of these parts of our mission overlap well with that of the Nature Conservancy. Doug Ladd, who was the former director of conservation for the Missouri chapter of the Nature Conservancy, once wrote, and I'm going to quote him here directly, quote, "There's no end game in conservation, but rather an enduring, interactive, carefully configured interventionist relationship necessary to sustain natural systems," end quote. So what Doug is saying here is that natural systems rely on us for survival. And because their survival depends on our efforts, we need to foster action and a cultural ethos that promote their conservation. Both the Arboretum and the Nature Conservancy are in it for the long haul, and I'm proud to support this work. I'd like to end by saying that my donation of property to the Nature Conservancy was extremely easy. I had friendly and competent help at every step of the way with the transfer of ownership and all of the necessary tax documents. I decided to make this a no strings attached donation, so the funds that resulted from the sale of the land that I donated can be used however the Wisconsin chapter deems most important. And I've been happy with the outcome of this story with a bittersweet beginning ever since. So I'd like to thank all of you for your support of the very important work of the Nature Conservancy. It's an honor to be here with you today and to share my story with you. Thanks.
Wow, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And like you said, what makes your story so impactful is that we have the undesignated funds, which is critical to leveraging everything we do for nature, from managing the land we own to marketing TNC to a wider audience and everything in between that makes our work so successful. So thanks again. Up next, we'll hear from TNC trustee Jim Schleif, who will share all the different ways he supports the Nature Conservancy, both as a volunteer leader on our board and as a Legacy Club member. So Jim, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to hear your story.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Schleif. I'm zooming from Milwaukee. This is a picture of me and my significant other, now spouse, Bill Morley, of 28 years. Wanted to share a little bit about my personal story with you. Definitely thank Karen for her very moving gift and your wonderful work in conservation, and to the TNC staff that all of us as donors just are constantly impressed with. I mean, to put on an event like this, there's like 3 dress rehearsals and lots of notes and making sure there's no glitches, just so everybody knows on the other side. And thank you to all of you donors, especially. We just can't thank you enough. So my love with nature really started when I was just a little guy with the Lutheran Pioneers, and we did a lot of camping and, you know, all the things that Weeblos do and that kind of thing. But we weren't allowed to join the Boy Scouts because they were Catholic. So I had to just learn my own route there. My mom in particular, generosity ran in the family, and I see my cousin is one of the Zoomers here in California, and her mom as well. And my mom always gave 20 bucks to all sorts of different little causes. And I kind of inherited that in college, and the Nature Conservancy somehow just really rose to the top as I started to look at what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I ended up going in the direction of international economic relations and French at UW-Madison. But I always had an outward focus on the world, whether it was cultures, economies, socioeconomics, histories, people. And that went into a passion for me to save the world. And I had a dream originally of going into the Peace Corps or working for the World Health Organization or something like that and living abroad. But what I realized is that Wisconsin and Milwaukee, we had lots of our own problems right here in my own backyard. And I never really went that direction. And I ended up going into philanthropy as a fundraiser for 17 years prior to my now successful career in real estate and investing. I was talking to Eileen the other day, actually. I didn't know you were going to be on the call, but I'm really glad you are. And we were talking about philanthropy and the phases of life and how, You know, when you first start out in spring and summer, it's about learning, it's about accumulating, it's about making sure that you have a roof over your head and a retirement fund and those kind of things. And then as we get a little older and we move into this sort of autumn phase, and we realize that we have everything we need, we have a house, we have food, we start to turn our focus even more outward. And that's kind of what I think this call is all about, is how, if you're on this call, you're looking to help others to have a better life, to make the world a better place, whether we're here or not. And one thing I just grew to love about TNC is my gift went up and up and up from 20 bucks a month, is the more you learn about it, it's just an organization that I in particular revere. I trust them implicitly with my funds. I love that their work is grounded in science, that it's nonpartisan, that it's nature for everyone. Their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is bar none some of the boldest in any organization, for profit or not, in the world. And their endless approach to entrepreneurial conservation methods, which actually sustain species and make humans in a much better place. So a while ago, I'm going to say maybe about 10, 12 years ago, I checked the little box that says I'm a legacy donor. And boy, that's when the phone calls and the letters start coming, right, everyone? Ooh, we got a legacy donor. But the nurturing has been wonderful, and the things that I've learned and the impacts in my own life, my giving has actually grown tremendously on an annual basis. And we'll tell you in a minute a little bit about our legacy giving. So I actually met up with Jerry, who you're going to hear about, on a little hike about 12 years ago through the McGuanago Reserve, and that began my legacy journey. About 3 years ago, I was invited to be part of a cabinet, a fundraising cabinet for the Wisconsin chapter, and eventually was invited to join the board, which I've been on for about a year as a trustee, and I'm the new chair of the Beyond Our Borders Committee. I'm on the Real Estate Acquisition Work Group, and also on the Wisconsin Paths Campaign Cabinet. One of the things I love talking about most about TNC, and that motivates me most, is the expansion of the mission to include the shared conservation agenda, which you may or may not have heard of, but it's becoming more and more important that we discuss the most pressing urgent needs besides the conservation of preserving the land and water on which all life depends. So the shared conservation really is tackling climate. It's tackling the ability to create sustainable food for our world for the futures to come, and clean water, as well as healthy cities. And all of those things are interwoven into all the passionate things I love about TNC. So a few years ago, well, Bill is of Norwegian descent and I'm of German, so we are very much consummate planners. I'm definitely the one who doesn't mind speaking in front of camera, which is why you get me and not him. But we started doing our estate planning, and you know, we all have worked very, very hard for a living, and our advisors told us, you know, you have three choices. You can give your money to your kids, you can give it to the government, or you can give it to charity. And we definitely didn't want to give any more money to the government because we've done plenty of that. We don't have children, but that doesn't mean you can't leave a huge legacy to your kids as well as charity. So we chose charity. And the first thing we did is we looked over our giving for the last 25 years, and we started to look for sincere, deep passions. And rather than giving 20 bucks to everybody like my mom did, we focused it in on three specific areas, and conservation is the #1 area, advancing human rights, and the alleviation of poverty, which can include everything from literacy, education, housing, access to healthcare, racial equity. And so our pods, this is where we give. So now we have this sort of self-defined location for all of our donations that we want to give. We approached the Greater Milwaukee Foundation in Milwaukee, and wherever you may be calling from, I'm sure you have a great community foundation, but TNC can also do a fabulous job helping you with planned giving. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind on that. And this foundation is over 100 years old with 1,000 family funds and almost $1 billion in assets. So it's another very trustworthy place for us to look at leaving a legacy. And while we looked at that legacy in these three buckets, we chose to split our fund, which of course will be worth a lot more when we're dead than it is when we're alive. But we're all worth more dead than when we're alive usually. But the fund will have a 50% annual residual, and these are maybe some ideas for you as you plan. And 50% of the spinoff of the interest is going to go to two organizations that we love the most, the Nature Conservancy, and this is in perpetuity, and 50% will also go to the Nelson Institute of Environmental Sciences through the UW-Madison system. Of the balance of the 50%, organizations will be able to apply for grants and capital gifts in these three pods. So those were just some things that were a little creative. It was really a joy to invest the time to think about all these things, and I really encourage you and your families to sit down and have that conversation. It's very meaningful. It focuses you for the future and certainly makes your present all the more wonderful. So thank you so much for allowing me to tell our story, and I wish everyone the best.
Jim, thank you for all you do for the Nature Conservancy here in Wisconsin and beyond. Your and Bill's foundation is truly inspiring. And while you did mention that you do yours through the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, the Nature Conservancy has a donor advised fund as well that allows you to make a charitable gift at any time and advise on how you would like your fund to support your philanthropic priorities. Okay, next we have.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Newell and Ann Meyer Nature Preserve, which is the largest individual gift for nature that our Wisconsin chapter has ever received.
I wish all
Jerry
of you
has
could,
an amazing
I wish all of you could be here with
Are
me
you
in
there?
person at the Newell and Ann Meyer Nature Preserve to experience the treasure that this wonderful couple left to all of us. Let me try to do the next best thing. I'll give you words and images to whet your appetite for a visit when things return to normal. And when you want to come out for a visit, let us know. This is a place that has beauty in any season. I visit the Newell and Ann Meyer Preserve often, and I never fail to see something new, something that makes me stop and appreciate the Meyer's gift to the Nature Conservancy. Maybe in spring, when migratory birds fly thousands of miles to get there, this is a time when the woodlands and prairies of the preserve come alive with pale pinks and blues of flowers. Or perhaps summer, when the northern harriers do breathtaking high-speed flights and dives over the prairies, and those prairies come alive with new, more vibrant shades of color. Maybe fall, when woodlands unveil their own rainbows of reds and yellows and russets, and sandhill cranes begin practicing in ever-increasing numbers for their flights to Florida. And then there's winter. This is a time of brilliant sun reflecting on the sleeping expanses of the snow-covered prairie. And you might be lucky enough to see tracks in the snow of one of our resident badgers, or maybe in the distance, a real badger. Newell and Ann Meyer. Newell spent 44 years at the Milwaukee Journal, starting out as a tour guide in 1936 while at Marquette University. His tenure at the Journal was interrupted by service in the Army Air Corps during World War II. You'll see the photo on the left here. He returned to the Journal after the war and worked his way up the ladder, retiring as a vice president at the Milwaukee Journal. Newell met Ann at the Journal, where she also worked. Their wealth came from their investments in the Journal's private stock plan. They lived in Wauwatosa, but in the 1960s began buying parcels southwest of the village of Eagle. They built the house that you see on the right slide and retired there in 1976. They accumulated 374 acres, about evenly split between croplands, woodlands, and wetlands. The Meyer property attracted TNC's attention because it has the headwaters of the Mukwonago River. This river is the purest, most species-rich stream in southern Wisconsin. Newell and Ann knew that they had a special place, and so did TNC staff, who contacted them in the late 1990s. Newell and Ann shared their dream of creating a legacy and told TNC staff that they wanted something that would live on after their deaths. So TNC staff began working with Newell and Ann to fulfill their dream. Ann died in 2004 and Newell died two years later at the age of 90. The will left cash and land totaling $12.5 million to the Nature Conservancy in 2007. This was the largest amount that had ever been given to the Wisconsin chapter. TNC soon began planning how to preserve, restore, and protect the land and cash, which was placed in an endowment. The Meyer's legacy exists in many ways through the endowment: property acquisition, staffing, land management, and leveraging. Property acquisition. Before they died, the Meyers made it clear that they wanted their money to be used to expand their dream by adding to the 374 acres that was left in the will. Over the last 13 years, TNC has used Meyer funds to acquire 3 key pieces. First was the Zimdar tract you see here on the map, which joins the original 2 pieces. Next came the Malik tract, which added substantially to the east side of the preserve. The 2 acquisitions brought the preserve size to about 652 acres. In addition, Meyer funds were later used to acquire the 80-acre Chapman Hills tract about a mile southeast. That property was a seldom used Girl Scout camp. The property joined 2 existing parcels to create a half-mile square protected segment along the McGonigal River. Staffing. Meyer funds also are used to pay part of the salaries of staff who do land management on the property. Land management. About a third of the preserve has been restored to native prairie, similar to what existed before European settlers arrived. Before the settlers began to come to Wisconsin in large numbers in the 1830s and 1840s, the land was much more open. Think of the vastness of the Great Plains. In southeastern Wisconsin, the sweeping ocean of prairies begins to make a transition to the north woods. At that time in the early 19th century in this area, you would have seen vast prairies punctuated by more and more woodlands as you headed north from what is now the Illinois-Wisconsin border. TNC's restoration of the prairies of the Meyer Preserve has brought stunning results in a remarkably short period of time. The prairies have attracted bluebirds that you see on the left, bobolinks that you see on the right, which migrate 5,000 miles to the preserve from South America, and many other birds that needed large expanses of grassland to survive. Work on the woodlands is focused on the removal of invasive species such as this wall of buckthorn. This removal has seen the return of many native species that were overshadowed and poisoned by the buckthorn. Those species include jack-in-the-pulpit, which is the photo on the left, shooting star, the photo on the right, and in the center, the exquisite green darner dragonfly, just to name a few. In the wetlands, high school interns helped to remove purple loosestrife over the last several years. A side note here, the teen in the red shirt in the center there now runs a nature preserve in South Africa. And we saw the return of great egrets and an increase in sandhill cranes and other bird species. Leveraging. Leveraging, what is leveraging? When TNC applies for state and federal grants, it's required to match the grant money in amounts ranging from 25 to 100%. Money from the Meyer endowment can be used sometimes for that match, meaning that there's more funds available to use on other preserves. In addition to the work I just described, Meyer funds will continue to let TNC protect and impact and improve the preserve for years to come. We have just begun work on a diamond and rough. That's 65-acre parcels at the southeast corner of the preserve. It is in an area where the woodland of rolling hills rises out of the huge Meyer wetland. For comparison, this is an aerial photo of what the site looked like in 1941. This is what an oak woodland used to look like and what we're aiming for. Here's what the site looked like when we started work. Again, a wall of brush. And now it looks like this. Clearing has proceeded a few acres at a time, and follow-up work over the next several years will hold back the invasives while letting the native woodland species return. Work also will continue elsewhere on the preserve to hold invasive species at bay. We'll also continue to improve and access for visitors, mainly through the expansion of the existing 3-mile trail system. The Meyer Preserve, as with all of our preserves, is open to the public for what we call quiet recreation. By quiet recreation, we mean hiking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and bird watching. There's an entirely different way to look at the Meyer's gift, though. What if? What if TNC had never received this powerful gift? TNC certainly would have been working in this important area. It's an area that's very special and surprising simply because of its proximity to the Milwaukee area, which is just about a half an hour or so away. If TNC had not received this gift, we would not have obtained the headwaters of the river. That would mean that some invasive species, such as purple loosestrife, might not have been controlled. And then the seeds from those loosestrife plants would have headed down the McGonigle River to create new colonies all the way through the watershed. And without the Meyer bequest, we would not have been able to have as many staff members working on restoration and preservation. I talked about leveraging before. Without the Meyer gift, TNC would have had to find other ways to come up with matching funds or grants. I could go on and on listing the what ifs, but you get the idea and can see the strong, viable, lasting results of the Meyers thinking about their future. This incredible conservation success started as a dream to create a nature sanctuary. And with collaboration, planning, and the desire to preserve nature, the dream blossomed into an incredible legacy that will benefit people and nature for years to come. Without forward-thinking supporters like Newell and Ann, this preserve that is forever protected wouldn't be here today. A planned gift is one of the most impactful ways you can support the Nature Conservancy's critical conservation work. Thank you to everyone listening today who chooses to support our mission. We couldn't do great conservation without you. Thank you for tuning in today to join us virtually. It was a pleasure to share the Meyers gift with you. Please feel free to post questions in the Q&A box so that I can help answer them during the Q&A session at the end. Now we have a video that is sure to awe and inspire as Harry Groom shares a letter written to his grandson, Hal.
Dear Hal, I think it's only fair that I tell you why I give so much of your inheritance to the Nature Conservancy. I guess now that you've learned I'm giving away what someday could be yours, you might be interested in hearing what I have to say. And I have a feeling your parents might be listening too. Well, my love affair with nature began when I was a boy, a bit older than you, but not much. I was captivated by the natural world, although in those days I just called it the outdoors. It began with animals, and eventually I could name almost every species in North America. Then my love affair spread to fish and where they live. Not only the rivers and the streams they call home, but the valleys, the gorges, and the mountainsides these waters flow through and over. Some 50 years later, Hal, I still find myself in awe of streams and rivers, wondering what secrets lie beneath their broken surface, where they've been, and where they're headed after they leave me. As you'll learn, ducks and geese got me too, taking such a strong hold on me that I spent hundreds of hours trying to recreate my favorites with wood and paint. I always felt way short of the way nature presents them to us, but I love the bond that carving and painting created between me and the birds I tried to portray. And then, of course, there's been my long-standing love affair with the high peaks of the Adirondacks. Every time I first see those purple-blue mountains silently appear as we drive north from Pennsylvania, I relax and my throat crowds with joy. Every time, Hal, and I only hope someday we can share the feeling together. So when I started volunteering for the Nature Conservancy and giving them what might someday be yours, what I was doing was very selfish, for I wanted to preserve all these treasures for myself. But after a lot of thought, I now realize that when I make a donation to the Nature Conservancy, I'm not giving anything of yours away. On the contrary, I'm investing for you, saving for you, and all your generation and generations to come, so that, as William Wordsworth wrote, you will come forth into the light of things and let nature be your teacher, as it has been mine. What's more, I'm doing it so that I won't be accused of another poet's curse. The earth died screaming while I lay dreaming. And last, I'm doing it so that the words of John Sawhill, a great man and a great friend of mine, and all of ours, won't go unheeded. John said, "In the end, our society will be defined not only by what we create, but by what we refuse to destroy." And I couldn't agree more. So what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm working hard to save the last great places, because I think it may well be the most loving thing I can do for you. Thanks, Hal, for making things come so clear.
Wow, an everlasting love affair with nature. What an incredible legacy to leave. That video never ceases to give me chills, and I hope it was inspirational for all. I did want to thank Jerry for his presentation. Jerry has an amazing 37-year history with the Nature Conservancy, first as a volunteer starting in 1983, and then as a staff member in 2008 till today. He has so much knowledge and passion for our mission, and Jerry will be retiring at the end of November. So we are so grateful that he's here for one final presentation before he starts on new adventures and chapters. So thank you, Jerry, for sharing your talents, and we wish you luck with all your future plans. And then our final speaker today is gift planning specialist Sherry Beal. Sherry works directly with donors in Wisconsin and other Midwest states who put the Nature Conservancy in their estates and helps with other complex gifts. She is a close advisor to the Wisconsin chapter as we work to raise more resources for our work. Sherry is celebrating her 20th year anniversary with the Nature Conservancy and lives in South Minneapolis with her husband, son, and 4 rescue animals. And then after Sherry shares her expertise with us, just a reminder, we're going to have that interactive Q&A session. So please put any questions into the chat box and we will be anxiously awaiting to answer those after Sherry presents. So Sherry, thanks for joining us today. We're happy you're here.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you all the presenters who came before me. And of course that I always have to get out a Kleenex when I hear Harry Groom's wonderful letter and story. I'm just delighted to join all of you on this call today. And I too am a Legacy Club member. I've included the Nature Conservancy in my estate as a beneficiary in my will and a contingent beneficiary of my 401k after my husband. We have a saying at the Nature Conservancy, we come for the mission, we stay for the people. And that's true in the case of so many of us who are startled to find ourselves reaching double-digit anniversaries at the Conservancy. And it's also true of our TNC members. It's not unusual to work with supporters who joined the Conservancy right out of college and who are now transitioning into or who are well into retirement. As a gift planner, I can be a resource to donors in many phases of life, making charity the beneficiary of their first 401k, talking about the importance of a will after a major event, a child's born, a first house, and even the loss of a loved one. And I can work with donors and my colleagues as well for finding tax-efficient ways of giving as we approach retirement. I love to talk with our donors about how to put their plans in place to honor their legacies while providing for both the people and causes in their lives. Everybody on this call knows that the Conservancy has an urgent mission. In the case of the lands and waters we protect, we also have a permanent mission. The Meyers we heard about recognized this, and so did some of our early supporters, such as author and activist Rachel Carson, who left the Conservancy, her estate, to start a Conservancy chapter in her beloved Maine. And to this day, the Conservancy of Maine continues to benefit every time another Silent Spring book is sold. My gift planning colleagues and I are here as to support our supporters, to include the charities in their wills or retirement assets. And as the supporter here in Wisconsin pointed out, the last year has involved a lot more time on the home front. And why not get all of those pesky items out of the way, including putting together our wills, durable powers of attorney, and healthcare directives. We work with donors to set up life income gifts, such as charitable gift annuities that provide a steady stream of income and an immediate charitable deduction at a time, as we all know, interest rates are at rock bottom. Jan is a donor I've been working with who set up her 21st gift annuity with us, funded with stock. And a donor named Molly just set up her second gift annuity funded with cash. They were both happy to receive over a 5% payout and a charitable deduction. We also would work with donors who give us special gifts, such as stock or real estate, that provide TNC with some much needed income now and help erase the donor's capital gains. Carl did so when he donated Apple stock to us, and retired Professor Ann and her husband did so just recently when they donated a property to TNC that they'd inherited that they didn't want to own. We're also working with a lot of donors before the end of this year to take advantage of the CARES Act of 2020 and maximize their charitable contributions with gifts of cash. I'm happy to share my information on chat if anyone would like to reach out to me at any time. And I'm just so happy to join you. Thank you for everyone on this call for all that you do for the natural world that we love. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. I did not know that about Rachel Carson. How very, very cool. We're so happy you could be here with us today, and I just really appreciate you sharing your expertise. I always learn something new whenever I talk with you, so thanks for sharing that with our viewers. All right, everyone, what we've been waiting for, it is now time for some questions from the audience. So all of our presenters are standing by to answer your questions. So please type any you have in that Q&A box. Here is a reminder, just in case you're wondering where that's located. These are where our slides are. So we have the chat and the Q&A down there. And yes, so I will be asking questions, and then presenters, I will be calling on you to answer. All right. It looks like our first question we have here is for Sherry. What are some of the benefits of IRA giving?
When you reach 70.5, donors have to make their minimum distributions. They have a break from that this year. And then all the taxes come due on those IRA contributions that, you know, you've been setting that money aside pre-tax for years. So a real advantage of that is you can roll over up to $100,000 in 1 year to the charity of your choice. And that ultimately reduces your taxable income. We have donors who have started using their IRA as their giving vehicle, you know, of course, setting aside enough that they need for their own needs.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That is just so great to know. Like I said, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for that. Our next question here is for Jerry. Jerry, we're wondering what volunteer opportunities are available at the Myers Preserve?
So people can volunteer in one of two ways. They can contact us and volunteer individually, which is nice because then they can go out there at a time and day that suits them. And a lot of that is seasonal. I mean, we can have them come out and work on garlic, pulling garlic, mustard, and invasive species in the spring, or harvesting seed in late summer and early fall. Or they can contact us and join a regular work party once we're allowed to have regular work parties again. With COVID right now, we just don't have the safety margin to do that. So optimally, the best thing for people to do is contact us and we can set up something individually, such as working on trail maintenance, something like that.
That's great. And then just contact us using our website.
Correct.
Sounds like the best way. Awesome. I've done some land management and it is fun to get out on those prairies and make a difference with your hands. But yeah, there's always a variety of work to do. So that's great to hear. Thank you, Jerry. All right, our next question here is for Karen. Karen, what projects are you working on at the Arboretum?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that great question. How long can I take to answer it?
We have 20 minutes.
Okay. We have been hit by COVID in terms of our project work, but we could bring all of our on-site land care people back to the Arboretum in mid-May. So we got started again. And as Elizabeth knows, when you miss a whole spring of burning, it kind of sets you behind on land care. But we did one burn before the shutdown and are doing some fall burns now. So our land care crew is back and working in smaller groups than before, or actually mostly singly. We do have some volunteers back working. Our team leaders, who are a group of really trained volunteers that have been with us for a long time, are on site doing some work, although we're not having any more volunteer work parties. And like the Nature Conservancy, we have really embraced Zoom. So we had a great fall series of lectures that were remote, and unlike the constraints when we're in person in the auditorium where we can only hold 172 people, we had over 200 people at a couple of our fall lectures, which were focused on diverse connections to the land, many different diverse groups of people. And we're planning other lecture series to be virtual at least through the spring. We've got a lot of research going on right now. We have a new program where we give fellowships to graduate students who are doing conservation related work. So we have pretty much our normal contingency of research projects going on at the Arboretum with graduate student work, faculty work, and ARB conducted work. So yeah, lots and lots of projects. It's an exciting time for us.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh, it's so great to hear all that wonderful work happening. Sounds like you are busy, so appreciate your time with us again. I know this was your second presentation today, so happy you could squeeze us in. All right, our next question is from Tia, and it is, there a minimum planned gift, or does TNC accept planned gifts? Let's see, sorry. Of any size. So I think this one is for Sherry.
There's no minimum to become a legacy donor. We have donors do all sorts of things. Making TNC a beneficiary in your estate might mean it's a revocable gift. It means oftentimes whatever remains. And so we're just grateful that people put us in their estate plans and become Legacy Club members and sort of spokespeople for us. So there is no minimum.
Great. And then I just had another question for you. What happens if you do put TNC in your plans and then your plans change?
You can certainly change your mind. You mean if you want to take the Nature Conservancy out of your estate plan, or sometimes we have donors talk to us about, this is a revocable gift. I don't know what the future holds, and of course, none of us know what the future holds. But there are assets that are more tax efficient and are better assets to give to perhaps the people in your lives sometimes, and other assets are better to give to charity. Retirement assets oftentimes are highly taxed when they come out of those accounts. Those are oftentimes excellent assets to give to charity, and it can be as simple as filling out a beneficiary form.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that information. It can be such a mystery sometimes, so it's so fun having you share your expertise again. All right, our next question here is for Jerry. Jerry, we are wondering, what is your favorite season to visit the Myers Preserve?
It has to be summer because there's so much going on. And there are species of prairie plants that literally are migrating from year to year. There's some of these plants that move to the edge of the preserve, some of them consolidate. And in the meantime, you've got all this bird activity. Dick Sissels, which is a ground nesting bird, as well as the bluebirds, which are quite protective. Walking through the preserve, sometimes you'll find a various species of birds that start to move when they sense you. It's just there's so much activity going on, and that's not to downplay the other seasons. As I said, fall is just gorgeous because you have all these migrating birds that are getting ready to take off.
That is so great. Yeah, there's nothing like the migration over there. It's so fun to see.
But I guess
Yeah, and just a follow. Oh,
a follow-up might be, as I said, it's a place that you can come and visit any season. You can stand in the same spot in different seasons and you're looking at something different.
that is so great. I know. I want to get out there and do the cross-country skiing. That sounds so fun. Give us something to do this winter. And we do have a follow-up question for you, Jerry. So are there hiking trails? And what are the hiking trails like?
There's 3 miles of hiking trails. They're moderate, very level in most cases. For anybody who needs some kind of assistance, either through a device or somebody working with them, you can visit our website and we will tell you where the ADA approved trails are located on the various preserves. Meyer has a stretch of trails, and so does the Lulu Lake Preserve, so that you can feel safe either coming with someone or coming by yourself. And let us know if you need special accommodations. We can certainly open a gate to get you into the preserve.
That is so great. I love, that we do options. I think getting the extension to open the gate up. That is just so sweet, Jerry. Thank you. All right. Our next question is for Jim. And the question is, what excites or interests you most about the Nature Conservancy's work?
Well, one of the things I love most is I have a very entrepreneurial mindset. So my mind is always kind of going. It's kind of marketing all the time, thinking of new ways to do things. And I just love getting TNC's quarterly magazine. I think it's quarterly, it might be bi-monthly, or attending all the webinars that are offered through global or even local. And then my favorite thing is probably how TNC always works with local indigenous populations to improve nature around them, or to improve farming, to improve water quality. And it's always fresh, new, innovative ideas that people can adopt, and it's kind of addictive. So one farmer does one thing, such as our sustaining agricultural programs here in Wisconsin, and then people hear about it and go, wow, his fields are doing a lot better than my fields. I wonder what he's doing. Or that woman's cattle is much more healthy and there's way more of them, like in the Columbia chapter that we network with. What is she doing? And it's always nature-based solutions, which in turn make humans more viable and economically more viable. And I think that's kind of the key, is these social entrepreneurial programs that are community-based in nature, so that nature and people thrive together. So never ceases to amaze me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that aspect of our work is, I think, why we are so successful. We integrate people and nature together because together we thrive, and I think it is really inspiring as well. But your take on it is so great. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so we do have some more questions coming in, but just a reminder, if anyone is curious about anything at all for any of our presenters, please just pop those in the Q&A or in the chat and we will get to you, no problem. So our next question here is going to be for Jerry again. And Jerry, what is the next management step after removing buckthorn to restore habitat?
Once you remove the buckthorn, it opens the space up for a lot of other species to come in, native species as well as invasives. So there's a lot of maintenance that has to happen after that. So one of the neat things that's going to happen, of course, is that a lot of native species, woodland species that were suppressed are going to come up. They're going to come up slowly because the buckthorn has toxified the soil. But one of the things we'll do is we'll interseed with native species to help foster that along. So that's one of the reasons that we collect seed at the preserves in the fall, is to specialize in what a particular area needs. That's
so great. I was wondering kind of how, I know Karen mentioned it, but how's the burn season been?
We managed to get one burn in, as you know, Elizabeth, a beautiful burn in the Baraboo Hills, which was quite a rugged burn, it turned out. It was very active, very busy, and we didn't get out of there until after dark, but it was quite exciting, and I'm glad we were able to get one burn in before our burn season got closed down.
Yeah, that was a fun burn though. We got some pretty hot flames and some really good fire effects. So I'm glad that we did get that on the ground as well, and looking forward to going for it again next spring. Yeah, so very fun. All right, so it looks like we have some more questions here. So Karen asks, how do the Nature Conservancy and Sierra Club cooperate and overlap in their programs and objectives and goals? So I think I would probably be the best one to answer that. And Karen, I am not that familiar with the Sierra Club, but I do know that we're both nature-based organizations. And yeah, that is something that I think Joy can answer now or later.
Oh, no, I was just marking that we're answering this live. Maybe
Oh,
Sherry
sorry.
has an idea of how the organizations might overlap too.
In terms of, I was reading one of the questions in the question and answer panel. So it was about how we overlap with the Sierra Club. Is that right?
Yes.
I always say that the Nature Conservancy is one actor on the great stage of conservation, and I don't specifically know how we're working with them on anything, but I think one of the things that has been the hallmark of the Nature Conservancy is that other organizations sometimes are doing things that we aren't, or complement what we do, and we can't all do it alone. So every organization is important because it's such an enormous job to conserve the planet.
That is so true. And thank you for helping out with that question there, Sherry. So we do have another question, either for maybe Jim or Sherry. How long did you think about making a legacy gift before you actually took action? And then the second half is it normal to put this off or to find it a little worrisome, thinking that far into the future? I would like to maybe hear from both of you.
You first, Jim.
Well, let's see how to answer that question. I've been thinking about legacy planning for 30 some years, only because when I first got out of college, I mean, I came from a blue collar background. I put myself through college selling women's shoes at Goldie's in Madison, if anybody remembers those days. But I went into nonprofit work, and I never made a ton of money in nonprofit work, but I sure got home every night with a very full heart. And so my first house was a duplex, and that was how I was able to own my first home. And then that turned out pretty well. And then I met Bill, and then we bought another duplex, etc. but it's kind of like, I think you think many of us have highly appreciated assets, stocks, et cetera. We're talking about annuities. And you kind of think about, well, what's going to happen when I can't take care of these anymore? What's going to happen when I'm sick of them, which is, pretty much every day. But we hang on to them, and then we came up with our end game, which was to put them all in a trust, and that trust goes to charity through the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. So we pay no taxes. I mean, there's all sorts of these fascinating vehicles that if it's never too early to start thinking about this stuff. I mean, even when you buy your first house or whatever these life steps are, have your first child, we have to constantly, I think, be planning for the future, or someone else will plan it for us. So. What about you, Sherry?
I would say I started thinking about estate planning, I would say, in my 20s, because I lost a brother very suddenly. And it was, I think, for sometimes people experience when something happens that really brings home that we're all mortal and what can happen when people don't have a plan. I think I observed the chaos that results without even a simple plan, and everyone, no matter really what age in adulthood, really need what I call the big three: a will, a healthcare directive, and power of attorney. And those things can be done pretty simply. I think it's human nature to put this off. I joke with donors because I follow up with a lot of donors who have inquired, and I have a tickle process and I check in with people. And a lot of people ask me to give them a nudge every once in a while, because it's estate planning is usually not what we want to do when we wake up in the morning. But I think there is a great opportunity as we accumulate assets to think about we can benefit charities and the causes that matter, and the people in our lives too. And there's a way to balance that out. So our department, our gift planning department and colleagues, we're here as a resource to donors so that there isn't chaos at the end of life, and that we are able to have legacies and make an enormous difference in some cases, like the Meyers did.
I would just add one thing to that too. And, I'm in residential real estate, and I work with a fair amount of estates for the last 17 years. It's just one sad type of client that you do have. But I have seen families destroyed at the end of a parent's life or a family, when there's no plan in place and the siblings are fighting over all these things, and none of them really matter other than the love that was shown to one another throughout their lifetime. And having witnessed that for the last 17 years, that's the last thing I want to happen to my friends or my family or my nieces and nephews, is have to worry about what to do with all my stuff. And so I would just really encourage you to have the conversation. And, it's a hard one sometimes. I mean, Bill's parents are in their late 80s and we can't seem to get it started even. So just, I guess, try your best.
All right. Wow. Thank you. With that, I think we will wrap up our Q&A session. So huge thank you to all of our presenters today. Incredible stories all around. I do hope everyone listening learned that whatever stage you are in life, plan giving can benefit you and your loved ones, while also helping protect nature for future generations to come. So there is a link in the chat where you can explore more options. Or please feel free to reach out anytime. We have, me and Sherry here who are happy to follow up with you via email. We will share our contact information. And then if you do already have a gift through your will, retirement plan, insurance policy, please let us know your plans so we can thank you and welcome you to our Legacy Club. And then another great way you can support nature is by speaking up for the reauthorization of the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Fund. This important program matches private dollars with public investment to conserve nature across Wisconsin. It will expire in July 2021 unless it is reauthorized in the next biennial state budget. You can learn more about how stewardship has helped the Nature Conservancy and others protect our forests, lakes, rivers, and wetlands in Wisconsin, and how you can help. You can just follow the link onto our website shown on the screen. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We do have a poll that will appear on your screen in a moment. Please complete the poll and then click the submit button before you leave our webinar today. And we just really hope you enjoyed learning about conservation and how you can create your own conservation legacy. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.